Hi, my name is Selah Quaran, and I have a question. Have you ever had a fever dream? If not, I can try to explain. A fever dream sort of feels like the last and final day before quarantine. I remember mine like it was yesterday. It was the last final day that I was able to see my friends without like having like an inch of doubt that I'd maybe be putting my friends, family, and my health in danger. When I left from school that day, I remember my friends and I were so excited. While we assumed school would probably try to be remote, we had no idea that it would feel this long, much less this isolated. I remember that day, my friends and we had this really crazy idea that we'd probably go on a road trip that weekend. And while my mom and dad would probably say no, the idea was just like, it was fun and we were just like able to at the time. We were supposed to go hiking, to drive-in movie theaters, and to Six Flags. And everything felt normal. But that night, we received an email from the school stating that schools would no longer try to be in session. My friends and I were still excited though. We assumed that we could probably see each other every day. Sort of like an extra vacation, just not going anywhere. Assuming that we'd probably try to be back in school in 1 month, we had no idea we'd be right here, right now. The first 2 weeks of quarantine, I was in very high spirits. I loved staying home every day, sitting at my dining room table and just talking about the Scarlet Letter. For those first 14 days, I would wake up every morning and I felt at ease with everyone that I was in life. For those first 14 days, I think that everything felt tranquil. Later, what I find out, these first 14 days are known as the honeymoon period, which basically refers to a feeling multiple students received. And that was super happy and just relieved because they felt like they were on break. But this would quickly change. By the time school ended, we were in quarantine for over 2 months. At that moment, I had no more motivation. Like, it was gone, but I still really wanted to see my friends. I would constantly stare at my phone, searching for any sort of a distraction to keep my attention away from the growing number of the COVID-19. And while I knew I'd probably not see my friends anytime soon, for me, I never wanted to admit that. And my false hope prospered until the new school year began. And in September of 2020, I knew that I'd probably not be going to school with any motivation. And while we were, yes, about to go into school like every other week, nothing would ever feel the same. And so when school closed down again, I was not surprised. Were you surprised? And I mean, I was worried though. And I was worried about the short term and the super long term effects of social isolation. And I didn't really know what that meant for my age group and my friends. And a recent study from researchers of the American Academy of the Adolescent and also Children Psychiatry in 2020 of July, they reported that some adolescents and also some children probably are more likely to experience some higher levels of anxiety, but also depression, probably during and after enforced isolation is over. I grew fearful that maybe this is not inevitable. So to gain some insight about how some others felt about isolation and just how they were dealing with it, I tried to turn to some of my friends. My friend Amira, a 17-year-old at the Hudson school, sort of agreed with my feelings, and she expressed that she felt a lack of motivation as well, but she also felt way more anxious than usual. As I talked to more of my friends, I noticed we're not the only ones, and we're all sort of feeling the same way. Additionally, I stumbled upon an article from the New York Times sort of highlighting what some researchers found during the first month of quarantine. I read that surveys suggest that in the first month of quarantine, loneliness increased but by 20 to 30%, and emotional distress tripled. I knew that if that was only the first month of quarantine, we must be much worse off. So I knew I should probably talk to someone and ask them some questions. I just didn't know who or how. And I began to feel increasingly sad and lonely, and it was And in all honesty, it's a little hard like to talk about, but it was one of the lowest places and the points of my life. I began to eat much less and I felt numb. After being introduced to Sienna Amon Walker, the owner of IBIM, and the work at the Paradigm Treatment Center, I decided that I'd interview her. And during our interview, I expressed some of my concerns with the effects of isolation and the fact that I had been seeing them in myself, but also my peers. Ms. Owen Walker welcomed my concern with open arms and explained how this is a crazy, crazy time for the way that we see the world and ourselves. She also related us to a quantum theory and explained when a particle is observed, it likes to switch its direction. She related that to Zoom calls and virtual calls. We are existing twice as a consciousness, which can lead us to want to switch something about ourselves and less mindfulness. For example, when I'm in my history class, sometimes I watch myself talking, which is a little conceited, and I look at the way that my mouth moves, and I'll be like, I don't like that. Let me change that, and it leads us. It's just not very good. And I also tried to ask her about social skills when we come back, and she explained how fear is a very normal feeling. So if you're afraid of the fact that you'll be super awkward when you come back to school, very normal feeling. We have not been in school for a very long time, she explained. Coming back to normalcy, it will take us a minute to replenish our social skills, and it's expected because we've been in quarantine for so long. While I began to feel a little better with how I was feeling, I still really wanted to know some advice, some tricks that me and you, we could do to alleviate some stress and sadness that sort of came along with social isolation. Ms. Owen Walker highlighted so many importances of self-care and swore that acting as if you be going outside would make your mood tremendously change. She explained that engaging in your daily routine as if you were not in quarantine would sort of help everything feel less redundant. For example, if you're waking up at 7 in the morning for a good fresh start, I know it's early, but it helps as opposed to sleeping in until 5 minutes before your history class, for example. We also discussed some of the importances of interacting with friends and also your family in any way possible. While social interaction is super limited, we still need it to survive, and we need it to feel like our true selves. I also interviewed Sherry Rosenblatt, teacher at the Hudson School. She explained to me the concept of journaling. And when I get all my feelings on paper, it will probably help me better understand them and grasp them. She offered a silver lining and explained the concept of resilience. This crazy time has showed us that we have to do 4 things. We have to stay afloat, stay super positive, we have to really take care of others, and take care of yourself. So it's now March of 2021 and we're still here. We're still growing restless and we're feeling unmotivated. We're still in quarantine. And with the help of social media, friends, family, life will continue to go on. In the beginning of quarantine, I felt super happy and super calm, and I just loved being home. But shortly after, that sort of turned into boredom, that turned into motivation, and that sort of turned into sadness. This way of living caused such an impairment on my mental health, and it caused me to lose sight of myself and who I really am. I plunged myself in an endless cycle of school, sleep, and homework. And however, with the help of Ms. Owen Walker, Ms. Rosenblatt, and many more trusted sources, I have found out that this time will keep on going until it stops. But the most important thing that you should do is to journal if you want, self-care, and never cut yourself off from the world. After speaking with all these individuals and researching on studies, on some articles, and just like talking with my friends, the most important thing that I want you to take away from this, and that I have learned, is that you are not alone in the way that you feel. Your emotions are validated and they make sense. And while you may think, I'm alone in this, you're not. I did.